Let's talk about Project 2025 and whether or not it is a manifestation of conservative policies. And let's talk more broadly about the Republican Party and the MAGA movement in particular, and whether or not those things are conservative. And I'll begin right out of the gate and tell you that no, they are not conservative, and I don't believe this is just a matter of opinion. It is a matter of objective fact. It's certainly not conservative in the way that term has been used for the last 50 years. There's nothing conservative about today's Republican Party, and certainly not the MAGA movement or its policy proposal, Project 2025. Let's just begin with Project 2025. Now, there's a lot in that document, and I will be honest, I haven't read the whole thing. It's like 600 pages. I'm not going to read that whole thing, but I have read a lot about it. I have read portions of it. I have read many summaries and outlines of it. I am very familiar with what's in that document. And while there may be some policy proposals that can be considered, traditionally conservative, those things are few and far between, and taken as a whole, which is how you should view this thing, it is not conservative at all. Because at its heart, what Project 2025 is about is consolidating and accruing more power in the office of the president. One person. That's what 2025 is about. And it's not even broadly philosophical. It is very specifically built around one person. This is a cult document. This is the policy document of a personality cult, a fascist personality cult, because it talks specifically about Donald Trump. If this was just a statement of policies and principles and governing philosophies, there'd be no mention of Donald Trump. This is centered around Donald Trump. This is a cult document. And what it does is it seeks to get Donald Trump into office and then empower him to the fullest extent possible. Make him as close to a dictator as they possibly can. They want Donald Trump as president, one single person, to accrue more power, far more power than the Constitution gives to the President of the United States. And then they want him to exercise that power in a way that is arbitrary, capricious, mean, completely unconstitutional, and dictatorial. That is what they want. That in no way can be considered a conservative document. This is not conservatism. This is something else. This is fascism in part. This is certainly authoritarianism without question, but it is not conservative. In fact, I can't think of anything less conservative than Project 2025, which is simply the policy manifestation of the MAGA movement. And this comes to the point that I've been trying to make for a long time now, basically since Donald Trump came onto the stage. And that is, Donald Trump is not a conservative. And since the Republican Party has completely been remade in his image, the Republican Party no longer is a conservative party. It is the Trump Party. It is a cult. It is a personality cult. It is a reflection of Donald Trump. It is so far gone into cult world and has so long ago ceased to be a political party that they don't even pretend to have a policy platform anymore. It was in 2020, for the first time in the history of the Republican Party at their convention, that they decided not to adopt a policy platform. They just said, whatever Donald Trump wants is our policy platform. That is not a political party. That is a cult. That is a personality cult. That's what the Republican Party has become, largely out of cowardice. And one by one, the cowards gave up every principle they ever pretended to have, and now they all march in lockstep. And there's nothing conservative about it. And it frankly pisses me off when people still use the term conservative to apply to Donald Trump, to apply to the Republican Party, and to apply to MAGA. You want to say far right, that is fine with me. But do not call them conservative. But I know this is an uphill battle for me, and that's why for the most part, I largely don't try to fight it anymore. I mean, that ship has sailed. The term conservative is attached to Donald Trump. It is attached to the Republican Party. And the problem is that because it's attached to Donald Trump and the MAGA movement and today's fascist authoritarian Republican Party, it has now taken on that meaning. So when you use the term conservative, it means Trump, it means MAGA, it means today's fascist authoritarian Republican Party. It does not mean the things that we used to mean when we say conservative. For example, I still consider myself a constitutional conservative. But today, when you say conservative, or even constitutional conservative, most people, again, associate it with MAGA and Trump and today's Republican Party. That's not at all what I mean when I call myself that. So I don't really call myself that much anymore. But, so I know that ship has sailed. I'm not really making that fight other than just to have it as part of our discussion here. There's nothing conservative about today's Republican Party. And as I say, I can't think of anything less conservative than 2025 and the things that Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans want to do. Because ultimately, what traditional conservative, if it stood for anything, it stood for limited constitutional government. So that's what I mean when I call myself a constitutional conservative. A lot of it has to do with political philosophy. At what level of government are decisions properly made? So you and I can agree on an issue, but disagree as to what level of government is best to handle that, or should, under our constitutional Republican small r system, what level of government should actually deal with that. Because just because there's an issue that we can identify and agree on that there should be government action doesn't mean that the federal government is the one that should or can rightfully under our Constitution deal with it. It might be, more appropriately dealt with by the states or localities. So these are things that are important to constitutional conservatives. And so true traditional conservatives are very much concerned about the proper role of government, which level of government. They're concerned about our federal system, about our Constitution, about limited government. And limited government doesn't mean you're opposed to government. It means the government should not be any bigger than is necessary to perform the functions it should rightfully be performing under the Constitution, and should not be getting into things that it has no authority to be getting into. So things like that. That's what traditional conservatives mean when they talk about limited government. It doesn't mean we're opposed to government. It just means we want constitutional, responsible government, so that the government not only stays within the bounds that are prescribed to it by the Constitution, but they are also good stewards of our money, and that they should not take from the American people any more money than is necessary to perform their legitimate purposes. So these are the kinds of things that traditional constitutional conservatives are concerned with. That has nothing to do with today's Republican Party or the MAGA movement, or certainly Project 2025. Constitutional conservatives would never support the kind of authoritarian seizing of power that Project 2025 wants to undertake in a second Trump term. There is nothing conservative about that. And it's funny how these people, pretend to be, they pretend to be conservatives. They pretend to be supporters of the Constitution. We know that's all a joke. but they constantly associate themselves with the founders of the country. The founders would be appalled. Those who fought the revolution against a king, against tyrannical authoritarianism of a king, would never be in favor of something like Project 2025. Those people, the framers of the Constitution, who specifically designed a system that separated out the various into the various branches of government, the three branches of government, the different powers of government, so that the different powers of government could not possibly be wielded all by one single person. That was the genius of the Constitution. The fundamental point of the Constitution was to separate out the various aspects of governmental power so that no one person could accumulate all the powers of government and rule as a dictator. That's why you separated out the ability to make law and gave that to the Congress, the ability to enforce the law and gave that to the president, and the ability to decide cases and controversies that arise under the law, they gave that to the courts. They did not want one person, one branch of government, and certainly not one person to have the powers to do all of those things, because that is tyranny. That is dictatorship. When one person can write the law, enforce the law, and determine the outcome of cases and controversies that arise under the law, that is dictatorship. That is full-on authoritarianism. They would never have supported that. And that is exactly the kind of thing that Project 2025 is trying to create in the office of the president. And not just in the office of the president, broadly speaking, but more specifically in Donald Trump, because this is a Donald Trump specific document. This is a cult document. This is the operating governmental theory for a personality cult. That is what it is. And there is absolutely nothing conservative about it. There's nothing constitutional about this. The framers, the founders of the country who fought the revolution against the king, they would be shocked and appalled by this. And yet the people, the proponents of Project 2025, these MAGA Republicans, constantly associate themselves with the founders and the framers and invoke them in everything they want to do. Those people would have been appalled by this. They would have been fighting this with every fiber of their being. And you don't have to go back to the founders and the framers to find, people who would have opposed this. Another thing that annoys me is the revisionism, right? So just in our recent history, people associate people like Ronald Reagan with this. Okay, Ronald Reagan would have had nothing to do with this. I mean, look at what MAGA stands for. Look at Donald Trump's policy proposal. He wants massive tariffs. Ronald Reagan opposed that completely. He was for free trade. Donald Trump wants to empower Russia, hand Ukraine over to Russia. He wants America to be the puppet of Vladimir Putin. You think Ronald Reagan would have gone for that? I mean, and on and on and on. The Constitution, Donald Trump shits on it. Ronald Reagan revered it. I mean, you can go down the list. Like I said, there's nothing conservative about today's Republican Party. Say what you want about Ronald Reagan, the Bushes, and whoever else you want to talk about Republicans from our past. Okay, you can have your problems with them. You can criticize them all you want. That's fine. That's legitimate. What's not legitimate is to associate them with Donald Trump and this fascist MAGA movement. And I talked about how Trump has completely reshaped the entire Republican Party into his image, right? Taken it from a conservative party and turned it into a fascist cult. And that has permeated every aspect of the Republican Party, even the courts. Look at what the Supreme Court did on that immunity ruling. That could have been, taken right out of Project 2025. Because what did they do? They did, in their legal decision, exactly the kind of thing that Project 2025 is trying to do. Empowering the president to be a dictator. That is what that decision does. The founders, again, would have been appalled. The framers of the Constitution would have been appalled by that. to make the president immune from prosecution for crimes that he commits while in office, abusing the office, using it to violate the law? You think the framers, you think George Washington would have been in favor of that? A man who willingly gave up power to set the precedent that we don't have kings in this country? You think that man who led the revolution would have supported this Supreme Court putting the President of the United States above the law and telling him you could commit crimes with impunity? Of course not. In the context of judicial legal rulings and in the broader context of traditional conservatives, you take a look at, juxtapose that position of the Supreme Court against Judge Ludig, for example. Judge Michael Ludig, he is a perfect example of what traditional legal philosophy, conservative legal philosophy has been, and what the Republican Party has been, or had been up until Donald Trump. You can disagree with Judge Michael Ludig, but you cannot lump him in with people like Donald Trump. He is just as shocked and disgusted by what the Republican Party has become as you and I. People like Liz Cheney, people like Adam Kinzinger. Again, disagree with them all you want. That's not the point. At least we used to all be on the same side. We had policy disagreements, but we were all on the same side. We respected the Constitution and the rule of law and democracy. Traditional conservatives stood for all of that. Today's Republican Party, MAGA, Donald Trump, Project 2025, the fucking fascists on the Supreme Court, none of them support that any longer. They only pretend to. Today's Republican Party, Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, it is fundamentally fascist and authoritarian at its core. And it is also increasingly just batshit crazy. There is also in it, these conspiracy lunatics. These people who and they will believe any nonsense. You saw it at the debate. These people believe anything that they tell each other on social media. And the lunatics on social media are driving the news. They're driving the discussion on the right. Every friggin' lunatic theory eventually makes its way up to Fox News. It's all over Truth Social. This is the kind of crap that feeds Donald Trump. This is what Donald Trump, is immersed in all day long, is the insanity from the fever swamps of these lunatics, these MAGA lunatics on social media. And as I say, that gets to Fox News. Fox News repeats it back into Donald Trump's ear. And then Donald Trump bleats it out on Truth Social, on Twitter, in his cult rally speeches. And whatever Donald Trump says, that's what everybody in the Republican Party has to support, no matter how batshit crazy it is. Just look at the debate. So Donald Trump reads this ridiculous bullshit about Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs and people's pets in Ohio. And this lunatic repeats it in front of 16 plus million people on national television during a debate. Because he believes it. Because he's a freaking lunatic. He is no different than any of these other right-wing loons on social media. And take a look at, you're seeing Laura Loomer being talked about all the time now. Because she's right by his side. She was at the debate. She's riding his plane with him everywhere. She's helping with the debate prep. She's with him the other day at the 9/11 ceremonies. This woman is batshit crazy. She takes this woman to a 9/11 commemoration ceremony, and she is one of the biggest 9/11 truther conspiracy theorists out there. She says the thing was an inside job. And he brings her to 9/11 ceremonies. And you know what? That alone, the fact that he associates with people like that it's not so long ago that something like that in and of itself would be disqualifying. The media would be all over this. Just the association of him with Laura Loomer. And she's not just a conspiracy theorist. She's an out-and-out racist. Okay? The fact that he's associating with her would be wall-to-wall coverage not that long ago. And he would be, destroyed, eviscerated in the press on a daily basis just for that alone. But look at all the other things he does, all the other people he associates with, all the other crazy things. I mean, for crying out, he had, what's the name of that? Nick Fuentes? This white supremacist racist. He has him down there at Mar-a-Lago. The press didn't care. Oh, sure, they mentioned it, but that's it. They just mention it. Let me just end with what I began with. And that is to reiterate the fact that Donald Trump is not a conservative. It's not technically accurate in any historical sense to apply the term conservative to Donald Trump. And because the entire Republican Party is now nothing but a cult in service of Donald Trump, it is not appropriate to refer to the Republican Party as conservative. Project 2025 is a set of Trump and MAGA's policy proposals and governing philosophy. There is absolutely nothing conservative about that. So stop calling it conservative. Stop calling him conservative. Stop calling MAGA conservative. Stop calling the Republican Party conservative. I know. I said it's a waste of time, and it is a waste of time. It just bothers me because that's a term I have used to describe myself for so long, and now I can't. And whatever, that's okay. It's just, to me, words mean things, and when you just change the meaning of a word at the drop of a hat just because some charlatan comes along and completely hijacks the word, it just pisses me off. He never should have been, the press should never have gone along with labeling him conservative in the first damn place because he never was conservative. Anyways, what it is fascist. That's what Project 2025 is. That's what Donald Trump is. That's what today's Republican Party is. It is a fascist, authoritarian personality cult. Let's be honest about what it is. And there's nothing conservative about it. It's not grounded in the Constitution. In fact, it's anti-Constitution. Most of what Project 2025 wants to do is antithetical to the Constitution. It is absolutely 100% in opposition to everything this country was founded upon. And for these fucking people to associate themselves with our founding and with the principles of our founding and to pretend that they're upholders of the Constitution is insulting. These people are nothing of the sort, and Project 2025 is nothing of the sort. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please go back and look at some of my videos, like whichever one is popping up right now. If you're new to this channel, I think you'll really like it. If you've liked this video, I've got a lot more for you. So please subscribe, and I'll see you again. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening.